Ko te auhaere o te pipi wharaurua, rāua ko te koikoi a tēnā. E tōnei te kahu o ngā huru, e kukume nei te kumara nui a matora. Ko putua ngā rua kumara, ki ngā makuru nui o te tau. Ko eke te wā, e tahuri ai te iwi, ki te hauhake, i ngā hua makuru o te wānanga. Arā, ko ngā purapura o Matariki. Ko Matariki tērā e ārau mai ana i te pai, te whetū tapu o te tau. Ko Ururangi kei runga, ko Eru Kapa-Kingi tēnei e tau nei. Nau mai, haere mai ki tā tātou kaupapa, a seeds of Matariki. Brother, nau mai, tēnā koe, kei te pēhea.
Kei te ora, my bro. Mate ana hau i te ora. Kua whiwhi nui o kia hau ki tēnei kaupapa, kia hono atu. Ki aia, kia noho tahi tāua, tēnā tātou.
Tēnā koe mapara. Tuatahi ake, whakamōhio mai ki tā tātou hunga e whakarongo mai ana kia tātou nei, o kia tāua nei. Ko wai koe, no hea koe.
Ahau, heke iho i ngā tātai hakapapa i roto o miri whenua, ko te aupauri, ka mutu he ononga hoki ki roto o ngā tikahu, te pātū, ka mutu he ononga i roto o te rarawa. Hoi tēnei, ka mihi nei, he hononga hoki i roto o ngā puhi ki whangaroa. Katoa i nei hakapaparanga i te taha o taku māma. Ka mutu ko ngā hononga i te taha o taku pāpā, kei roto o Apanui, kei roto hoki o Waikato. Anei aku ihi, aku wehi, aku tapu katoa, ka mihi ki a tātou.
Oosh. Brother, I've been waiting for this. Honestly, we've been connected online for a little while. And I remember just seeing some of your posts and some of your whakaaro that you have been sharing underneath whare whakaaro. And I would just listen and I would just read. And I was like, far out, the depth in your whakaaro and the things that you were just sharing. It was just resonating deeply with me at the time. And it was just great to, I guess, see that, but also, you know, to now be here and we've had many connections, I suppose, in terms of through different people or at different kaupapa. But it's going to be great to see the wānanga that comes out of it because you're someone who just runs it straight. And so where does that come from, bro? Like just the, I guess, strength or courage and just being able to take things forward, whether it's in kōrero or even just how you hold yourself.
Oh, kia ora, bro. Yeah, I think I probably get that from my mum, He wahine mā rohi rohi. Kore e tango i ngā niho o te kupu. She just says it how it is, and it's funny because I've kind of developed, I guess, a brand of being that guy that just says things for what they are. But it's not even like I do that intentionally. To me, I'm just speaking truth. I'm just speaking what in my mind is normal and true. And some people will be like, oh, you know, that's pretty radical. And I think, well, actually, it's not radical. It's just normal. But some of us have kind of been conditioned not to kind of speak those truths out of fear of judgment, maybe. And even some of Tawhirimatea, I think, even fear our own freedom and the freedom that can come and the liberation that can come out of living in our truth and speaking our truth. So anei hau, te tangata kōrero i te pono.
Far out. And you've been sharing a lot recently too, eh? Like you've been more on podcasts, you're championing a lot more kaupapa. And so how has that been a part of, or how have you started to move and weave into sort of being more at the front in these kinds of discussions that are happening, bro?
Yeah, I've been real grateful actually for the opportunities that have been presented to me recently and being able to kind of step off some pretty big platforms, not for my own mana or my own kind of glory, if you want to call it that, but for the dissemination of our kōrero, which to me is the most important, ko te matua, ko ngā kōrero, ko te pono. So any platform I can get to spread kind of educational, empowering kōrero, I'll take it for our people, koe tēnā, ko te whāinga. And yeah, I've kind of been in this journey for a little while now. We're probably recently feeling quite a peak. And yeah, again, just grateful for that and grateful for, I guess, people seeing me as a person that they can trust in terms of the kōrero around particularly te Tiriti o Waitangi, Whakaputanga, the history of Aotearoa, and also like political stuff as well. I get messages all the time from people like saying, bro, can you explain this? Can you explain that? I'm like, yeah, of course. But the fact that they reach out and trust me to do that, to me, that's a privilege, and I'm trying to hold on to that and look after that.
Wow, that's a good way of looking at it too, bro. Because when, I guess, the change in government actually happened, I just realized how uneducated I was around what that meant for us as Māori with this new government, and just seeing, the clickbait headlines or even just the fear that was now lingering, through our people. And the first place that I did start was you, and it was your guys' podcast, Never Ceded. And I learned heaps around that, and it was young Māori tāne talking about these kaupapa and making it relatable, making it cool, and normalising the kōrero around politics, because growing up, politics was a thing that you'd turn away from because it just felt like a big maunga. I don't even know what's going on. I know that I'm impacted by it, but that was the basis. But then I guess perhaps it's my maturity, growing my own growth, or, now that I have my own children, there's more sort of things that I feel like I need more awareness on. So how have you guys started to normalize talking about politics or what's actually happening for us as te iwi Māori in regards to this government or just in politics in general, brother?
Yeah, I think just trying to make it accessible, bro. And for those whānau who are listening, who were in the spot that you've just described, about not knowing what's going on, not having a clue really about politics or what that is, like, don't feel bad about that. That's actually a deliberate result of an education system that doesn't teach us those things, and actually, in my opinion, hides those things away from us. Because if we're not politically aware, then it makes it easier to just come over the top and make political decisions without being challenged, right? So us knowing and gaining knowledge is actually an inconvenience to those in power. So I'm trying to be as inconvenient as possible to the powers that be, and disseminate the knowledge and empower through that to as many of us as possible. And that's by making it accessible and making it Māori as well, and just normal, like try and make it like anō he kōrero kaputi. He kōrero kaputi no, not overly scary or out of reach. Just kia Māori te wairua o ngā kōrero, kia Māori hoki te kanohi, e Māngai e kōrero ana i ngā kōrero, he mea nui tērā, because we're not in that situation being talked at. Ko tātou anō e kōrero ana ki a tātou, he mea nui tērā.
Whoa, I like that. Because in politics, it feels like you are being spoken to, eh?
That's it, bro.
And you resist that. It's almost like you're being told what to do, but there's almost like a initial resistance to whatever is being shared, but there are āhua Māori around speaking with or having a discussion or open discussion is something that we listen to more, or we actually participate with more, right?
Tika, bro, tika. And that's essentially what oppression is, right? Is when there's an oppressor, a person in power, who prescribes to you a way of being and instructs you to do A, B, C in order to comply with the rules of society, right? So they provide you with a set of rules, a set of rules you had no say in, you had no contribution to, but nonetheless you have to comply with it, and it's being prescribed to you. And that's what oppression is. So we're liberating ourselves by questioning those rules and even thinking about shifting away from them and making our own rules. Koia tērā ko te huarahi ki te ora, the pathway to liberation.
Well, so it's first understanding where we are at the moment, which is in the oppressed column. So we have to first be aware that we're there.
Tika.
And then understand the rules that they've put in place don't actually suit us.
Tika.
And so then we get the re-empowerment, being like, oh, we've been a part of this for this long. Now what's over here? And so now it's now forging the path to liberate ourselves by, I guess, honouring te tiriti, honouring he whakaputanga. And so are these the kinds of things that, am I getting that right, bro?
Koia pū, bro. Yeah, spot on. And that realization that we are oppressed, like obviously that's a hard pill to swallow, but it's necessary, because otherwise it's just happening around us and we don't know, and therefore how could we address it? But I think our generation are becoming more bold and kind of stepping into that reality, but not like that's not the beginning and end of us as a people. We are greater than our oppression. We are magical people, and to kind of reawaken that magic, first we have to realize our realities and then be able to kind of create new realities and create a new world where we are fully free in our Māoritanga.
Ooh. That's beautiful, brother. That's that affirmations that we were just talking about there, my bro. You know, and can you also speak about, I'm keen to double back to the affirmations, but I think it's important at this part to just talk about why te tiriti and he whakaputanga are important for us to better understand.
Kia ora. Te tiriti, whakaputanga, and particularly as I think about it in the context of Matariki and the practices that we're reclaiming, te tiriti, whakaputanga are a pou in the ground that protect our mana, our rangatiratanga. Neither te tiriti or he whakaputanga create our mana. Our mana is derived from our tupuna being the first to come here from Hawaii and living here undisturbed for over 20 generations. That's where our mana comes from. The helpful thing with he whakaputanga and te tiriti o Waitangi, he whakaputanga declared that mana to the world, and te tiriti maintained that. Right? And so it's important that before we talk about anything Matariki related, tikanga Māori related, that we actually first address the elephant in the room, which is the fact that our rangatiratanga, our mana, is not being acknowledged. Right? It's actually been diminished and oppressed for almost 200 years. So, anō ki au ko te kāta kei mua I te hoiho. Ne? It's a bit like the cart before the horse, when we're not taking away from the beauty of revitalizing these practices, but our tikanga and the revitalization of our tikanga must go hand in hand with the recognition of our rangatiratanga. Those two things are inextricable, and they are two sides of the same coin, and must hae me haere tahi e rā mea erua ka puta tāwa ki te ora.
Wow. Man, I can feel the Māori and the mana of all of your kōrero, and that's just part of the decolonization of us though, is like, man, this is the truth. It's not what we've been told to be as Māori or what we've seen. And so what would be like a path, you know, for someone who has a colonized mind but feel, because it's a feeling, you know, I can feel everything that you have been sharing, and I'm sure there are listeners out there who be like, man, what I'm hearing is not how I've been thinking, but what I'm hearing, I'm feeling. But there's a disconnect between the feeling, the wairua Māori, and the whakaaro Pākehā.
Kia ora.
And so what are some kōrero around that to help our whānau connect more to the feeling of our mana motuhake, but having that confusion around how the lens that they see the world through?
And I suppose that kind of exposes the need of it, that actually hasn't been addressed probably to this date in a meaningful and wide manner across te iwi Māori. I wish I could just say right now, just find this resource and you'll find all of the kōrero there, step by step, how to decolonize yourself. But unfortunately, I tēnei rā, hore kau te tahi raumi pēra. That's something that I guess we can work on and create, but the absence of that resource is also deliberate, right? So in the same way that the oppressive powers have kept away the history and true knowledge of te tiriti o Waitangi and he Whakaputanga, they've also, I guess, kept us away from the tools of decolonization. And those are things that we're reclaiming I tēnei rā. And hopefully our tamariki mokopuna actually don't have to do what we're doing now. Work through these processes. Because ko rātou ka whānau mai ki te ao e māna ngā whakaaro, e wātea ana ngā whakaaro. Purity of mind, I guess you might call it. And at that point, as opposed to decolonizing, we're actually just encouraging and humanizing them into the best Māori that they can be. So they don't have to work out of oppression. Their starting point is liberation and freedom.
Man, you just speaking to all parts of me, my brother. And so when we sort of, I guess, move into, a discussion that we had, and you go, before we actually stepped in here was shifting the vision from having that fighting mentality to moving into the sense of affirmation. And the kōrero that you're providing me is actually uplifting, you know, and it's encouraging. And we need that to even fight. But how can we use affirmations around all of the kōrero that you've been sharing? How is that helpful for us moving forward toward liberation?
Ki au ko te mea nui, ko te iho nui, ko te kauhanga nui, ko te balance tērā, ne? Nā, ko te kei roto i ngā karakia tawhitoa ngā tūpuna, mea na te kōrero ko tū ki taha maui, ko rongo ki taha matau. Right? So, tū is at your left side and rongo is at your right side, and that's because tū ko te taha ki te riri tērā, ne? That's kind of more abrasive, aggressive, ko tū tērā. Nā, ko rongo, ko te taha ki te āio, ne? A bit more peaceful, calm, diplomatic, one might say. And it's kind of trying to find the balance between those things. That's the promotion of what these kupu and these karakia, that's the message behind it. And at times I do feel like we get a little bit too matauenga, he whawhai. And that's understandable because the circumstances that surround us kind of provoke us to be like that. So I'm at this point at the moment where I'm thinking, how do we balance that out? Kia rongo te ao, and we're stepping into an affirmative, positive space, right? That's growing as opposed to constantly feeling like we're on the defensive. Because one, that's just going to drain us of time and energy. And two, it's no good for the wailua. So me wailua tau, me wailua pai. So yeah, I'm kind of still figuring out in my mind like what that looks like.
What it looks like.
Hoi anō. Being conscious of that is important.
Because it's almost, as you sort of mentioning as well, is it something that they're wanting? Are they wanting constant confrontation? But being able to be in a state of affirmation, now perhaps I'll just speak on like an individual basis, when my wairua is in a space of you know, aggression, trying to control a lot of things, it does have a sense of an impact on how I actually am as a tāne in general. But as I start to use affirmations, being in a more positive state of mind, man, there's actually a lot more progression in circumstances in my life, whether that's as a papa, whether that's as a friend or provider. Everything actually moves a lot more fluidly when there's more affirmations in the direction of positivity, because we've also had a kōrero around how are we able to be in a great position regardless of who's in government and making these rules. And like what I'm hearing is there's no straight path to figuring that out, but there's new answers that are starting to, I guess, be explored. And how can we sort of like work in harmony or in balance with those things? Yeah,
kia ora, bro. Yeah, so the other way that you could look at it too is like the actions of political leaders at the moment are a distraction, right? And it's almost like if we're constantly on the defensive towards those things, then we're playing into their strategy of them keeping us busy and therefore not stepping into that affirmative, positive space. And if we really actually take that positive affirmation, affirmative space to its kind of extreme end, we could get to a point, and this is kotaku moi moi a wawata nui tēnei, we could get to a point where no matter who's in government and no matter the decisions made in that Pākehā whare, in that whare Pākehā, it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't affect you, me, our babies, anyone, because we'll be living entirely in our whare o te ora, our site of freedom and power. And so let's keep that in mind, as opposed to constantly being locked into he whawhai.
And it's a lot harder to be in that positive affirmation state because it's a reconditioning of the mind. How can we start to recondition our mind to be in a more positive state when you're saying we've been provoked to be in a more negative state? And there's the mahi there. Like it's got to start off individually, then to your whānau. And the other thing, as you're sort of having a kōrero with me, bro, the other thing that comes to mind, it sounds similar to a te reo Māori journey.
Kia ora.
You know, he orite, you know, you go through all of these different, but similar experiences when you're trying to revitalize your reo Māori, but you're also trying to re-indigenize yourself at the same time. So it's almost like they go hand in hand, te reo me te mana motu hake.
Tika, bro. And those things are all connected, and one leads to the other, right? So he haere tahi e la mea. And I think te reo Māori has been on an awesome journey for the last 50 years, and tupu ana te reo Māori, te kōrero I te reo, e kaharangona ana te reo I hea. And at this point, I think we're kind of like, maybe not at a crossroads, but at a point in the path where, okay, me huri ai nei ki te ako I ngā pūtakehanga o te rangatiratanga o te mana Māori. Because it's only at that point that we can, I think, truly move even further in our journey of reclamation and liberation.
The synchronicities, bro? But it also just shows how big the mountain is.
Yeah, bro. Kore mutu, bro. Tēnei hailing, te mea nui just kia haere tonu.
Yeah, me haere tongi me anga whakamua.
Koia,
bro.
Koia tēnā.
And so how does this work for you on an individual basis, bro? Like, so what is your background? I knew you studied law. Is that part of what you do as well within terms of the mahi that you're doing currently? Or
Yeah, it is. So I studied Pākehā law, I call it, at Victoria University, and kind of went through that journey. And one thing that I always reflect on is like when I was studying to be a lawyer, the lack of education around our rights as tangata whenua. And I was still kind of figuring that out for myself, and it's probably in the last 2 or 3 years that I've really stepped into decolonizing myself, radicalizing my thoughts, you might call it. And then now I'm at a point where I kind of want to create like a handbook, I guess, that to help others go through the journey that I've kind of just gone through or going through still. And so currently I'm a lecturer at Auckland University, and I sort of teach on Indigenous rights and the intersection between Pākehā law and tikanga Māori, things like that. But actually, like my wānanga in there is just kaupapa aroha. That's what I do outside of mahi, and I love it. I feel like when I'm doing wānanga and teaching whānau about why they're rangatira, and why we are rangatira, I feel like I'm really living in my purpose, and it's centering, bro, and it's powerful, and hopefully kind of all of these wānanga can add up to like a critical mass of this rangatira movement.
Because if you empower one to connect to their rangatiratanga, the domino effect of that is huge, bro?
Yep.
Because if you change one person, or if you're changing a collective, the ripple effects are like unquantifiable at times, because you can't see the impact of that one person you've influenced in a positive manner. And so I get it when you say, that's purposeful, because you're seeing that, but you're feeling into it. And what are some of the experiences that you are hearing or seeing? Are you just seeing people's eyes light up, or are they coming up to you to say, whoa, bro, I didn't even know that this is who I am?
Yeah, bro, like heaps of just those like maramatanga moments, like aha moments, like, oh, gee, because we say never ceded sovereignty, right? And when people first see that, they're just kupu. Those are just kupu. But when I provide the whakapapa to it and saying that, well, at the signing of the Tiriti o Waitangi, there were 80,000 Māori in Aotearoa and only 2,000 Pākehā. So therefore the myth that Māori and our tupuna just handed freely over all of their mana to Pākehā without any question and without any cost or price, in that context, when I describe that as being absolutely false to them, in accordance with that evidence, they're like, oh, gee, because this whole time I thought the opposite. I just bought into the colonizer story that our tupuna just rolled over in 1840. And then when I provide the kōrero around the land wars from 1845 through to 1870 and saying, well, if our tupuna freely gave away all their mana in 1840, why would they then go to war to protect it for almost 30 years across the motu, right? So it's like providing those just short like bits of history and truths that help us put this thing in our puku that we've been feeling for ages into words, and then into thoughts and then into words, right? Because it is a puku thing. And I remember going back to when I was at uni, like sitting in class thinking, there's a massive thing missing here. And I don't know what it is, but it's just, must be my tupuna saying to me, like, e koro, e hara tēnei te kōrero, whaia te māramatanga. And it doesn't take much to get there, I think. if you take, I guess I've taken invested a lot of time into kind of the shortest, most important kōrero to give to get there. So yeah, my mission is just kia tukua ki te ao.
Te puku, you know, me rongo e, bro.
Tika.
Me rongo i ngā āhuatanga āroto. And the moment that we're able to really connect to that and entertain it, it's not just feel it and then walk out the door and just carry on with your life, bro. It's got to sort of be something to entertain. Like, wow, why did I feel that? What is that? And the more we actually consider it, I feel this is where we get thought-provoking, We start entertaining new whakaaro that we haven't had before. And I think it's that part there that we must, I guess, look at in terms of our own growth and reindigenizing and stepping into our own sovereignty. And the other thing that was coming to mind as you were talking, bro, is that part of having the short snippets? Because no one's really at a point, I wouldn't say no one, but that's the best way to teach, is how can you dissect a lot of information, simplify it, and then communicate it well and effectively.
Yeah, that's it, bro. And like, I guess I'm a bit of a nerd like myself, Tiriti nerd you might call it. And so I enjoy reading heaps of kōrero and like going through the history and thinking deeply about what did that mean? What does that mean? But not everyone enjoys that. And pai ana te la. I'm not promoting that everyone should, you know, be reading like thousands and thousands of pages of history or tribunal reports or anything like that. If that's not your cup of tea, pai ana. But I guess the bare minimum for me, it's like, I think about like movements like the Black Panthers, you know, and they provided kind of like just short documents on like describing your rights, like things like that. Like if every single Māori had at least that, bro, it would be on. You know, it would be just like, oh, yep, sweet. And then anyone who wants to go further than that, e pai ana. But this is like, kuia tēnei ko te pūtakehanga, right? And these are the bottom lines of why we are sovereign and why we are rangatira.
Wow. And what do you feel your most epic find, whether it was at the start of your journey or even now as you've been dissecting all of this mātauranga, what's been something that's just stood out to you that was like, whoa, kua taka te kapa?
Yeah, pai te rā, right? There's a lot of kurahuna i roto i ngā kōrero. One thing that's really come to the fore in my whakaaro and my thinking is actually how our tupuna viewed the world, bro. So I'll tell you a little story about one of my tupuna from Ngāpuhi. His name was Te Pahi. Now, according to the records, he was the first Māori to travel to London in 1791. Right? Te Pahi went over to London, and it was a political trip, right, to develop political relationships and also commercial to develop trade relationships, which actually are one and the same. But one of the big realizations from me in reading this kōrero about Te Pahi is when he got to London, he could not believe seeing the sight of homeless people on the streets. Right? So he thought, oh, kātahi te whenua rereke ko tēnei. Ne? Kātahi te iwi rereke ko ia tēnei. An absolute disbelief that there would be people living without homes and without kai. That to our tupuna was completely foreign to their thinking and their philosophy. And Te Pahi could not believe his eyes when he got there. Not only that, but at the same time, while seeing these homeless people living in poverty, he was seeing these people living in castles. And then that was kind of, I guess, the first experience, Māori experience of kind of the capitalist society, Pākehā capitalist society. And he could not believe it because our measure of rangatiratanga is your strength in providing for your people and feeding your people. So he saw this king or this monarchy and thought, man, they're not feeding their people. Kātahi te mea kino koia tēnei. And so let's remember that we're a magical people who bring everyone on the journey of oranga with us. And that's been something that I've held on to, just to remind us of like, oh, actually, we will be the saviors of not only Aotearoa, but this entire world. Indigenous minds across the world, koia tēnā.
Wow. That must have been some kind of experience, bro, to be in your world as a Māori, knowing your tikanga, knowing your way of living, getting on a boat, going over to these people who have colonized our whenua and seeing how they live and just being just so surprised about what he was experiencing, what he was seeing. If you put yourself in his shoes, bro, what do you think would come to mind for you knowing what you know now?
I guess probably thinking about the nature of a peoples that would allow that to happen, and kind of probably ka aroha ki tērā hunga, ka aroha ki tērā hunga. There's a kōrero by he's a Brazilian political activist and also writer. His name's Pāho, and he one of his most famous books is The Pedagogy of the Oppressed, and he talks about the liberation of oppressed peoples, generally indigenous peoples, must also be the liberation of the oppressors, right? So when we liberate ourselves and remove ourselves from oppression, actually at the same time, we have to rid the oppressors of the kino inside them that allowed them to oppress us in the first place. So in becoming liberated, we must not become oppressors ourselves. And koia tērā ko te kōrero, what's good for Māori is good for everyone in Aotearoa. Koia tērā, what's good for tangata whenua is good for everyone. And our status as tangata whenua means that we have an obligation to look after everyone that lives here. And that's what we would do, because that's just a normal part of our tikanga. That's just what we do. Whāngai manuhiri, manaki manuhiri. But the fact is, our power to exercise that has been taken away from us from the oppressors. Hoi anō, ka wea huri ki te patu, me huri ki te hakaora, i te mea e pīrau ana tētahi mate i roto i te hinengaro o te oppressor. Ka aroha tērā.
When we're talking about maunga, not only do we have to free our own liberation, but then we have to exercise how do we liberate the oppressor. So it's like, well, we've got to work hard on ourselves, and then we've got to move on working on to those who have caused the mamai, which is hohonu, but he tika, taua kōrero. Do you think Matariki and, these kaupapa that are starting to really have a sense of excitement for us as Māori and its new mātauranga, how whakaaro pāna kia Matariki, bro, in this context that we've been speaking about?
Yeah, I think it's hugely relevant, bro. Like when I look at Matariki, when I look at puanga, when I look at, I guess, our tikanga in relation to the world around us, those things, Matariki in particular, ngā whetū tapu, to me, those are a roadmap to our oranga, right? And generally, that's what those point us towards. It's like a map. Ki ana, a haere ki konei, e ora ai koe, ne? And in reclaiming that, we're reclaiming ourselves, and reclaiming our models of health, wealth. And by doing that, that's how we become thriving as Māori. Going back to that kōrero, that writer Pāho Freire, he also talks about the completion of a human, right? And being humanized. So I guess like you and I, bro, and a lot of us, we're kind of incomplete beings, right? And in order to become fully complete, we must live fully within ourselves, right? And that's a process of humanization, is claiming who we are and what it means to be not just humans generally, but Māori humans, right? And what that means, our tikanga, our whakaaro, our karakia, all of those things, our reo. But we've gone down a path of being dehumanized because those things have been taken away from us. We talk about reclamation. You only have to reclaim something if it's been taken from you in the first place. And that's what's happened through the Native Land Court, disconnected us from our whenua. Native schools took our reo away from us. And then something that people aren't willing to talk about is the role of the church in taking away our karakia and our belief systems that were here long before Pākehā got here. So all of those have dehumanized us. And because of that, we're incomplete beings. But to be complete and whole again as Māori, then ēnei tikanga katoa, Matariki, hautapu, karakia, these are all steps to step back into ourselves and to center ourselves as complete beings, as complete tangata.
Kōrero mai e pāna ki te hautapu, bro. I seen you do hautapu last Matariki.
Yeah.
And, you're there next to your brother, Tipene, si te kura taiaho, si Rāwhiti roa. Can you talk about the hautapu, bro? And you being someone who was delivering karakia, who was part of the ceremony. Can you talk about some of the things that go on for you and what's happening in that space, bro?
Yeah, kia ora. Yeah, me mihi au ki a Ngāti Whātua, ki a te kura mai pōhiri i a mātou ki a tū ki te rā hautapu, kawe ai ngā karakia. Yeah, it was magical, bro. Just the entire experience. It was just those are those moments of Māori magic that you just feel and you're like, bro, we're on here at Māori ahau and we're just a beautiful, magical people. Arongo I te tapu. And yeah, being at Takapara for the last hautapu was not only a privilege, but if I reflect to not even a year before, bro, I was like, it's almost a complete opposite. Like I wasn't doing any karakia, any hautapu. I was still kind of like figuring out, oh, where's Matariki looking up in the sky? I think it's that one. And I'm still not an expert now on it, but it was a big turning point in stepping into our beliefs and our practices. So yeah, it was a huge honor. Mm. And it also helps to raise the profile socially. There were thousands of people at Takapara and ka nui te Pākehā I reira. He me mihi au ki e rā Pākehā maia. Because I think Pākehā as well, they're missing that in their world. They don't have that kind of like magic that they can be a part of. Mm. And by the grace of us and our manaakitanga, well, haere mai ki te kaupapa, you know. So, and that's an important part of achieving that kind of Aotearoa hou ki au.
But it is cool, you know, to see tangata tiriti, to see Pākehā part of these beautiful kaupapa, because ka rongo e rātou I te wairua, I te āhua o te Māori, ne? And so, you know, ko toku māma tētai, bro, you know, I tipu ai I roto I te urewera, I rua tāhuna, he Pākehā tōna āhua, engari, he Māori tōna wairua, tōna āhua, bro. So, you know, he pai hoki ki te kite I nei āhuatanga. And we've aligned you with Ururangi, bro. You know, mo tēnei kaupapa, you know, o Tawhirimatea, e hau haere I roto I ngā mea katoa. And so talk to me about, you know, Ururangi, your relationship, and why would you think that, you know, we aligned you ki tēnei whetū?
Yeah, he pai, he mihi tēnā ki au. Yeah, probably going back to what we were talking before about kind of this brand of unknowingly created that e tangata kōrero hāngai, kōrero tika ki te kaupapa. Whether it caused disruption or not, or ole go iho ki au. That's kind of how I've always been. Again, probably something from my mum. But if I actually think deeply about like Tawhirimatea and like what he stood for, koia te atua I tohe mo te aroha, I tohe mo te tika. Ne? Mo tāna I kite ai he tika. Ne? I te wānanga ana rātou kōna tuākana. Koia ka mo te wehenga o ngā mātua o rangi me papa, koia ka mea o no. Me kawe pe, ka hore tēnei e tika ana. Kore au e tautoko I tēnei kaupapa. Nā, ka tohe I te tohe, ka pakanga ki tana tuakana ki a tūmātauenga, pakanga rāwa pautikaha. And he was standing and advocating for what he believed to be right. Ne? What he believed to be morally correct, just those things. And ka tohe, e tohe tonu nei. Right? So that's, if I can kind of reflect that and how I live my life, ka pai, ka whakahihi au. Mm-hmm. And then another thought that I had about Tawhirimatea is, and I'm no expert when it comes to wind patterns or weather, but anō ki au, like you have hau maiangi, you know, it's a type of hau, which is like, kind of like calm, soft. And then, this is just my imagination working here, but mā te hono o tētahi hau ki tētahi hau ka kaha ake tērā hau. So, ko te hauiti, ka tūtaki ki te hauiti, nā ka hau nui I reira. Nā a te wā ka hau pū kerikeri. Ne, koia tērā he hau āwha. O tētahi kōrero a tētahi o aku tūpuna o Āpirama Taonu I roto I tētahi wana karakia. Ko te mūmu ko te āwha. So, on one end of the spectrum is this hau maiangi, and on the other end of the spectrum is te mūmu, te āwha. And to me, that, like, the converging of hau, the meeting of hau to kind of create a storm and to create a big disruption, that's representative of the critical mass that we could create as an iwi. So, ko tāku, hari te mea ko hau nahe ko Tawhirimatea, ko tātou katoa. Ko tātou katoa. Ko reira, me pupuhi, me tohe, era mea, tohe mo te aroha, tohe mo te tika.
I think a good explanation or example of that would probably be the activation that happened up at Waitangi. Like there were a lot of hau gathered in the kāhui, you know, they went on to the marae and tautoko hone harewira, and that was a beautiful thing to be a part of. But as you're sort of explaining that, it felt like that was an example that you and I have both been a part of. So do you feel that resonates, bro, in terms of that example? And can you speak about that activation, my bro?
Yeah, most definitely. That activation up in Waitangi was something that I'll never forget, obviously, and the most powerful thing about it was the converging of like minds, like hearts for the kaupapa. E tohe ana I te tika. Ka hua ki te whakaro, ka hore tēnei tika. Hea tātou e pohiri nei I te kāwana patu I a tātou ki runga ki tō tātou marae. And that was the crux of our kaupapa, was to object that decision and to stand for what's right, even in the face of adversity and probably challenges from our own whanaunga, right? Those are all my matua up there, my aunties, uncles, whanaunga. So it was hard for me to step into that, but I te mutunga iho, I thought, no, ko te mea tika, e haere anau I te huarahi o te tika, right? So I te tuarahi o te tika o te pono. So long as I'm comfortable in that, e pai ana, you know, haere tonu. And another aspect of hau is that I think is relevant too, is ko te hau hoki tētahi, ko te mea, ko te tapu o te tangata, ne? Kei runga I aia. So it's like hau is also a kupu au tupuna used to describe like the physical manifestation of tapu. Right? So it's like kei o huruhuru, kei o maikuku, o tō kiri katoa, ne? Even like your huare, saliva, all of that have an element, all of those things have an element of hau in them that are specific to the person, nōna e rā hau. And, you know, when we do karakia for whare, everyone's touching the walls in it. Well, the reason why we do that is to attach our hau to the whare, right? So we connect ourselves to the whare. And I felt really grateful and privileged that day up in Waitangi, because all of you fellas, my comrades, were there attaching their hau to the kaupapa. And again, that's that critical mass picture. And it was beautiful. And yeah, e kore ware iau.
And big mihi, you know, to our tungane, Ia hori, and our bro Te Kuru as well. You know, you three were the ones orchestrating everything that enabled, I guess, that to happen. And even getting on to the marae Ātea, bro, was like, whoa, crazy, we made it.
Yeah.
Because it was like, what are we up to? Ay, here's the moment.
Yeah. That was all like wairua stuff happening that day, bro. It was magical.
And that was the second time I went to Waitangi, and man, it was awesome. It was such an awesome time being up there. Mean weather, but awesome kaupapa. The tent was packed out. Everyone was there to actually listen to all the kōrero and wanting to level up. And, you know, there was one thing that I did say around a mihi to this government for bringing us closer together. And then the bro Hori messaged me and he was like, nah, bro, don't thank them.
Yeah. Hei aha.
Hei aha rātou, bro.
Yeah.
And so what are some of the kaupapa that, I guess, something that we could be aware of, bro? Like, are you doing wānanga that are happening around the motu, or are you just sort of following the wairua within and just seeing what comes up, or?
Yeah, at the moment I'm doing this wānanga rangatira. I put up like a post out a few months ago now, and I've just been getting messages and emails and kind of just going to Māori organisations and tuku ana I te kōrero. And it's been awesome, mostly in Tāmaki at the moment, just closer to where I'm staying, but I've been going up home as well and want to kind of go further out across the motu, maybe do like a tour kind of thing. But also like tēnei ao, nehe ao, hiko. So I want to kind of create like an online resource out of it too. Just basically what I already say in these in-person wānanga kouhou, but in a way that's accessible wherever you are in the world. So if there are any sponsors out there, tono mai.
But I think it's just awesome the way that you're going about your kaupapa, the way that you message a lot of your kōrero. It's landing, you know, and it's actually awakening a lot of that rongo within the puku that we were talking about. And, you know, I just want to give it over to you, bro, to share some kōrero with our listeners to perhaps ignite more of that intuition or that mana motu hake a kei roto I a rātou. So, yeah, bro, kei a koe te wā, my brother, kia whakakapi e nei kōrero.
Well, tātou O koutou katoa e hakarongo mai ana, kaua e ware he rangatira kei roto I a koe. E rangatira kei roto I ia o tātou. E tahi o e rā rangatira, ko hanga roa e moe ana. Ne? Mo reira, ko tā tātou e haka oho I tērā rangatira kia maranga ke kirunga. So I strongly believe that every one of us has a rangatira living inside of us, waiting to be awakened. And through learning kōrero and stepping out and discovering our truths and speaking our truths, that rangatira will become us. And we'll be living as rangatira. And there's that kōrero, right, that we stand on the shoulders of giants in reference to our tupuna.
Ai.
Well, if our tupuna are giants, then so are we, e tātou mā. So let's not fear our power and let's not fear our freedom. Mahia te mahi, tohia te tohe, kia puta tātou ki te whaiau, kia puta tātou ki te ao marama, ki te Hawaii ki mokopuna, ki te Hawaii ki a pōpō, kia kahara tātou.
As one person steps into their greatness, as one person steps into the acknowledgement of the giant within, it just really gives everyone else the permission to be that within themselves, right?
Koia, bro. Koia,
and
bro.
that's been a common wānanga that I've been having with people who are stepping into their greatness. And do you feel for yourself that when you see people doing that, whether it's your mama, whether it's your friends, or whether it's people you don't yet know, but you can see it, eh? You can see when people are acknowledging their gifts. You can see it when people are stepping into their mana motuhaketanga. And the thing that I want to share, I guess, for our listeners of this episode is, if you're acknowledging it and you're seeing it, that gives you the permission to allow that to resonate to a part of you so that you may begin to express. The thing that we got to move away from is when you're experiencing that in terms of seeing someone stepping into their greatness, you're seeing someone doing something positive or as a part of a movement, you got to cut the whakaro that says, oh, that's good for them, but that's not me. It's being able to utilize the beautiful energy that is coming from these people.
That's it, bro.
To then help you sort of feel or plant the new seeds of positivity within yourself, so then you become the example for those who are watching you. And so I just really want to acknowledge that kōrero, brother. I feel empowered being around you, and I've seen a lot of your mahi that has been of impact for a lot of people. And I think this climate has just been a great soil for you to actually do the mahi that you're doing, because there's so much more ahead, and that's the exciting thing. So me mihi ka tika kia koe, brother, and thank you for being a part of this kaupapa.
Tēnā koe, bro. Nō ki te whiwhi. Kia ora tātou katoa.
Tēnā tātou te whānau.